Hello, welcome back everyone. At this point you should have this packet in front of you with your name and date and class on it. Today is the first day of our new topic, Topic 6 or Topic 8, and some of you may know that this is a fast topic. There's only 4 lessons in this topic. In this lesson we're going to learn about samples and populations. And so our objective today is to be able to determine if a sample is representative of a population. And so you'll ask yourself, how can I determine or how can I create a representative sample of a population? During today's class, you'll be using the pause feature often, and then you'll unpause when you're done with a particular problem or section. So right now I'm going to introduce the do now. It says that the table here shows the lunch items sold on one day at a middle school cafeteria. We're asked to use the given information to help the cafeteria manager complete his food supply order for next week. One important detail is right here that this is for just one day, and he needs to make a plan for next week so that he has enough food. So the 2 questions that you need to answer is, what are some conclusions that the manager can make based on this data? And then why might it be helpful for the manager to look at items ordered on more than one day instead of just on that one day? So right now you're going to hit the pause button. You're going to complete both problems. You're going to write at least one sentence. You're not going to leave anything blank. So leaving things blank would be the worst thing to do. Always write something down. There's no reason to not write something down. There's no risk involved. Okay? So first you're going to write down what conclusions the manager can make using these numbers, and then why might he want to look at more than one day instead of just the one day. So hit the pause button and then unpause when you're ready to have your answers checked. Here are some conclusions that you might make. You might say that hot dogs are the most popular, and that veggie burgers were the least. You might say that the fish tacos are almost twice as popular as the veggie burger. As always, write down something that's here if you didn't include it in your answer, so that you have a complete answer. Why might it be helpful for the manager to look at more than one day? So he's got the data for one day, but we don't have any information about if it's the same every day. So he might want to look at more than one day. Because we don't know if every day is the same. Maybe the most popular item changes on different days. So to give you some context, in this topic, the topic is titled Use Sampling to Draw Inferences About Populations. In this topic, we're going to learn how to use data from a smaller group to make conclusions about a population. For example, polls before an election are one example that you might be familiar with. Smaller groups of people are asked who they will vote for, and the results of the poll help predict the winner of the election. And data like this can be used to make lots of different kinds of decisions. For instance, data from sports can be used to make a play or to create a lineup. Feedback from students, teachers, and parents can be used to change the school start time. We're going to learn how to create a sample that represents the population that we're interested in. We will also learn how to use measures of center, like mean, median, and mode, and measures of variability, range, interquartile range, and mean absolute deviation, to make inferences and determine the reliability of those inferences. So first, we're going to understand what the difference is between a population and a sample. In this example, it says the 2,468 registered voters in Morgantown are voting on whether to build a new stadium. Morgan and her friends really want the town to vote in favor of the new stadium. How can they determine how the voters will vote before the day of the vote? So Morgan and her friends could ask every registered voter or the entire population of voters in the town how they plan to vote. So the population in this case is the entire or every registered voter. However, that's a lot of people. That's 2,468 people to talk to. And that's going to take a long time, and that's going to be difficult to talk to every single person. So what Morgan and her friends might want to do instead is they might want to sample they might want to talk to a sample. So Morgan and her friends could ask a subset or a sample of the registered voters how they plan to vote. So a sample is just a smaller group of the whole population. And these people in the smaller group here are being used to represent the people in the larger population without actually talking to every single person in the population. At the bottom here, we have two multiple choice questions, and you're going to circle the best representation of a population for number 1 and the choice that best represents a sample in number 2. This is another case where you're going to press the pause button. You're going to answer both questions, and then you're going to unpause once you're done. Don't skip over this. Please pause the video, answer the two questions honestly, and then correct your answers by unpausing. Go ahead and pause the video now if you haven't already. At this point, you should have two choices circled. It says, in number 1, it says a beverage company wanted to see if people in the US liked their new logo. And we have to circle the choice that best represents the population. So we wouldn't choose this one because this is just a selection of logo artists. We wouldn't select this one because this is a selection of shoppers. 3,800 children between the ages of 5 and 15. That group wouldn't really be able to tell us what all the people in the US were thinking. And so the best example of a population is right here, every person in the United States. In number 2, a musician wanted to see what people who bought his last album thought about the songs, and which of these is the best example of a sample. So the first example here, the first option, is every person who bought the album. This would be like a population. A selection of people who didn't want to buy the album, probably not the best choice. 250 girls who bought the album. We don't want to sample the girls only, so we want to make sure that our sample represents all of the people who bought the album. And so that's why D is the best choice. It's a selection of 3,000 people who bought the album. All right, so at this point you should have flipped over and we're looking at the next set of questions. In this set here, we have 4 examples, 4 sets of images, and we're supposed to determine which is the population and which is the sample. So just like before, you're going to go ahead and pause the video. You're going to write the word population and sample next to each picture, and then you're going to unpause and correct your work. So just like before, don't skip this part. Hit the pause button. Identify each picture as a population or a sample, and then unpause so you can go ahead and correct your work. All right, so hit pause right now. All right, so in number 3, all of the residents is the population, and then the residents of a particular county are the sample. In number 4, all of the quarters, that's the population. The word all kind of gives that away. In number 5, the ants, the 5 ants is the sample. And all of the books in the library, that's the population. All right, so next what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to respond to the 2 questions below, where you're going to create your own definition for what a population is and what a sample is. And I'd like you to use at least 1 or 2 sentences, use your own words, and include an example. So hit the pause button now and unpause when you are done. So a population is the whole group that you want to study or that you want to be able to describe. So one example is all of the students on Team 7B. A sample is a smaller group used to represent the population. And an example would be if we picked like every 5th person on Team 7B. In the triad, it says Miguel thinks the science teachers in his school give more homework than the math teachers. He's researching the number of hours middle school students in his school spend doing math and science homework. So here we're asked to decide or determine which of these is the population and which is the sample. So the first is the blank includes all of the students in Miguel's middle school. And the second is a possible blank is some students from each of the grades in the middle school. So the first is the population. And the second is an example of a sample. And so it's more efficient to study a sample versus a population because often our populations are very large. And so trying to contact and interview or survey all of the people in a population, that's really tough. And so we use a sample because it's more manageable and we can use that information to then describe the population. As always, you can always pause the video if something's going too fast or if you didn't write something down. Moving on to describe a representative sample. And so Morgan and her friends, they decide to survey a sample of the town's voting population. How can she know that the survey results from the sample of voters represent the position of the entire town's population? So on the right-hand side, it says that a representative sample accurately reflects the characteristics of the population. And so that's why in the other examples, like asking only girls, that didn't represent the population. Or talking to only logo artists, that didn't represent the population of the entire country. In a random sample, every member has an equal chance of being included. A lot of times, random samples also tend to be representative, but they're not necessarily the same thing. In a random sample, it means that everyone in the population has the same chance of being picked. You also want to make sure that your sample is representative. So on Google Classroom, what I did is I posted 2 videos. One is called Learn Zillion, Identify a Representative Sample. You're going to watch that whole video, and then you're going to put a check mark here when you're all done. Then you're going to watch a second video called Learn Zillion, Identify a Random Sample. And again, you're going to put a check mark in this box when you are all done. So right now you're going to pause this video, and you're going to watch the 2 videos that are linked on Google Classroom. You're going to watch the whole video, both of them, and then put check marks here and here after you've watched both of them. When you've watched both of them, you're going to continue on this video, and we'll finish the packet after that. So right now, hit pause and go over to Google Classroom. All right, so at this point, you should have watched the 2 videos that are on Google Classroom. You should have put check marks in the 2 boxes. So in the next 2 examples, it says we're going to determine if the following are random and representative samples. We'll say yes, or we'll say no if they are not going to be random and representative, and we'll explain why. So you survey the customers at the Square One Mall. You want to know which stores they shop at the most, and you walk around the entrance to Macy's and choose 20 customers for your survey. Will this sample be random and representative? Next, you want to know the average second trimester math grade for 7B students. You pick 25 names out of a hat. Will this sample be random and representative? So hit the pause button, respond to these 2 questions. Never leave anything blank. Make sure you respond to both of them. Make sure you say why, and then you can unpause to check your answers. So hit the pause button now and respond to both. All right, so right now you should have responded to both questions. This first example is not an example of a random and representative sample. Some of the reasons are that you are asking people what their favorite store is, but you're only talking to people at the entrance of Macy's. And so the people coming in and out of Macy's are likely to be people who like to shop there. It's not a guarantee. They may have just parked outside of Macy's, but you're also more likely to talk to people who are fans of Macy's if you're standing outside the entrance to Macy's. Okay? And also, it's not likely to be random because you're choosing 20 customers, so that's not really a large enough group, and we can't be sure that those 20 people are representing all of the people that go to the mall. So 20 may be too small. a sample in order to talk about all of the customers that go to the Square One Mall. You want to know the average second trimester grade for 7B students. You pick 25 names out of a hat. So this is a yes. Every member of the population has the same chance of getting picked. So, a representative sample is a sample A representative sample is a sample where the members have the same characteristics as the population. A random sample is a sample where all members of the population have the same chance of being picked. Next, what I'd like you to do is to pause, and I'd like you to turn to a partner and describe a sample that would be representative and random, and then make a second sample that's not representative and not random. So hit the pause button, turn to your partner, describe a sample that's representative and random, and then another sample that is not. So hit the pause button now. All right, moving on to the next page. It says a produce manager is deciding whether there is a customer demand for expanding the organic food section of her store. How could she obtain the information she needs? And so in this case, she would want to create a survey that represents the customers that shop there, and make sure that every customer has the same chance of being asked. Okay. So that might be done through like something on the app. There might be something where they have a survey in the store. Maybe at the bottom of the receipt, there's a place where they ask people to go online and submit their thoughts on the organic food section. In the next section here, we're going to talk about how to create a random sample. And so here are the steps that we follow to create a random sample. We first define or determine what the population is. We decide how large the sample size should be. We make or acquire a list of members from the population. So like in school, that would be like a list from Aspen. For the voters, you can get a list of all the voters in a town or all the people with driver's licenses. Everyone would get a number, and then you would generate a list of random numbers to create your sample. So down here, you're going to put this in your own words. So the first step is to decide what your population is. Decide how big your sample size is going to be, and that can be a little tough. because you don't want to have so many people that it's too many, but you also don't want to have a too small sample where the sample doesn't represent the population anymore. When you get a list of all the members of the population, that might be where you go to Aspen, or you get a list of all the people with a license, or all the voters, all the residents of a city. You would assign everyone a number and then randomly select people from that list, and then use that, or do something like picking every 10th person or every 7th or 5th person, and now using those people, you can go and ask them your question. In the next part here, you're going to go and create your own random sample. And the question that you want to respond to, or the prompt is, you want to know the favorite ice cream flavor of the students at MVMMS. So hit the pause button and then come back to the video once you think you've created a sample that would tell you what the favorite ice cream is of the students here in the school. And then lastly, when you generate multiple random samples, I want you to go ahead and read this part to yourself, and then check out the 2 samples, and then read the analysis at the bottom. So if you need to hit the pause button, you can do that. You're going to read the examples here. You're going to check out the 2 samples, and then look at the analysis down below. Up here it talks about how most of the members are different, but there are some that are represented in both. It's likely that they are representative of the population. And now you're going to go and compare Jeremy's sample with those of Morgan and Maddie from the other page. And when you're done, you're going to go and summarize the lesson, pretending that someone's absent, and you have to pick the 3 or 4 most important things for them to pay attention to. When you're done with the summarizer, you can go ahead and start working on your homework.